footage begins in silence. June 14th, 2024, Scottsdale, Arizona. A fixed black and white security camera mounted above a three-car garage captures a wide view of a quiet gated community. The desert light is harsh, flattening everything into pale grey tones. It's 2:17 in the afternoon. The driveway of a $4 million estate sits empty for several seconds. Then a black Mercedes SUV turns the corner slowly and pulls into frame. The house belongs to Evelyn Harper. She was buried just hours earlier. The SUV stops at the base of the circular driveway. The driver remains inside for a moment, engine running. There's no sign of grief in this footage, no visible rush, just timing. By sunset, $9.3 million will move out of Evelyn Harper's accounts, and the cameras will record every step. Evelyn Harper built her fortune the quiet way. She wasn't flashy, she wasn't famous. In the late 1990s, while most investors were chasing internet startups, she focused on something less glamorous but more durable: cybersecurity. She invested early in small Silicon Valley firms that specialized in encryption and network defense. When cyber threats became mainstream news in the early 2000s, her portfolio exploded in value. She sold most of her positions by 2012 and relocated from Northern California to Arizona. Scottsdale offered privacy, dry weather, and distance from the world she'd already conquered. She purchased a gated property in North Scottsdale, installed a full perimeter surveillance system, and lived alone. Her husband had died years earlier from pancreatic cancer. They never had children. Her only close blood relative was her nephew, Daniel Harper. Daniel was 38 years old, a licensed real estate broker in Phoenix. On paper, he looked successful. In reality, his business was unstable. Arizona's housing market had cooled, commissions were unpredictable. He carried significant debt, a large mortgage on a new build home, 2 leased vehicles, and credit card balances that quietly grew each month. Evelyn helped him over the years, not with handouts, with loans, structured transfers, carefully documented assistance. She believed in discipline. Money, to her, was a responsibility. Living in the home with Evelyn was Marissa Cole, 44 years old. Marissa had been hired 5 years earlier as a private caregiver when Evelyn began experiencing mobility issues after a minor stroke. Over time, Marissa's role expanded. She scheduled medical appointments, managed medications, coordinated household staff. She had access to the kitchen, the laundry room, and eventually the office, though only under supervision. Neighbours described Marissa as attentive and calm. Daniel described her differently. According to family friends, there was tension. Daniel believed Marissa had too much influence. Marissa believed Daniel only visited when money was involved. Security footage from Thanksgiving the year before shows them sitting across from each other at the dining table. There's no audio, but the body language is telling. Daniel leaning back, arms crossed. Marissa standing near Evelyn's chair, protective, watchful. Evelyn in the centre, small but composed. That tension would become the foundation of something far darker. On the morning of June 14th, friends and distant relatives gathered at a funeral home in Scottsdale. Evelyn Harper had passed away 3 days earlier at a private hospital after complications from pneumonia. CCTV from the funeral home parking lot shows Daniel exiting the building around 1:32 p.m. The service isn't over yet. He walks briskly to his SUV, checks his phone, and makes a call. He speaks for nearly 4 minutes. His posture is tense. Then he ends the call and remains seated in the vehicle. At 1:48 p.m., security footage from Evelyn's home shows the front gate opening. Marissa's white Lexus enters the property. According to her later statement, she returned to retrieve paperwork needed for probate filings. At 2:16 p.m, the black Mercedes SUV pulls through the gate. Daniel. 2 minutes later, the driveway camera captures both vehicles parked side by side. The house Evelyn designed to protect herself now records something else entirely. After a burglary attempt years earlier, Evelyn invested heavily in security. 14 cameras covered the perimeter, entryways, hallway, and the interior office she referred to as the study. That room contained financial documents, investment statements, and a personal laptop connected to multiple brokerage accounts. At 2:22 p.m, interior hallway footage shows Daniel and Marissa walking toward the study. Marissa carries a small leather keyring. Daniel walks ahead of her. The study camera captures them entering. The door closes. There is no audio, only motion. Daniel moves directly to Evelyn's desk. Marissa stands near the bookshelf, arms folded. After several seconds, she steps forward and hands him a key. He unlocks a drawer. He removes a manila folder. The camera angle catches the edge of official bank letterhead from a major New York financial institution. He flips through pages quickly. Marissa checks her phone repeatedly. They speak. We cannot hear what is said, but Daniel gestures sharply. At one point, he points toward the ceiling, toward the camera, then shrugs. At 2:41 p.m, Daniel opens Evelyn's laptop. The screen isn't visible in the footage, but later, forensic analysis will confirm the login time. An authentication code is generated and sent to Evelyn's email account. Marissa steps closer. She looks over his shoulder. At 2:58 p.m, Daniel takes out his own phone and photographs several documents. At 3:05 p.m, both exit the study. They leave separately. At 3:42 p.m, CCTV from a private banking branch in downtown Phoenix shows Daniel entering through glass doors. He greets a senior client advisor and is escorted into an office. Within 2 hours, $9.3 million is wired from Evelyn Harper's estate accounts into a newly formed limited liability company registered in Delaware just 48 hours earlier. The LLC lists Marissa Cole as the registered agent. Daniel Harper is listed as managing partner. 2 weeks pass before anyone notices. The Harper Family Foundation, a charitable organization Evelyn funded to support cybersecurity education, is scheduled to receive a substantial portion of her estate. When the foundation's attorney begins coordinating with the probate court in Maricopa County, something is wrong. Liquid accounts are nearly empty. Bank statements show authorized transfers executed the afternoon of June 14th. But Evelyn was already deceased. Daniel tells investigators the transfer was legal. He claims Evelyn verbally authorized him days before her death to secure the assets during probate to prevent delays. He says Marissa, as power of attorney, acted within her authority. Marissa provides a copy of an amendment to Evelyn's will, signed 3 weeks before her passing. The amendment temporarily assigns oversight of liquid assets to a trust administrator, Marissa, pending probate review. But the bank has no record of that amendment being filed or verified prior to the transfer. Hospital security footage introduces another layer. On June 13th, the night before Evelyn died, ICU hallway cameras show Marissa entering her room at 10:47 p.m. Visiting hours had ended. She remains inside for 18 minutes. Electronic records show that at 11:02 p.m. an amendment document is digitally signed using Evelyn's credentials. Investigators begin to suspect the timeline. Scottsdale Police Department opens a financial crimes investigation. Subpoenas are issued for all security footage from the Harper residence. Detectives review hours of silent recordings frame by frame. They notice details invisible at first glance. At 2:40 p.m. on funeral day, Daniel's phone lights up. Seconds after Evelyn's laptop displays a login prompt. At 2:41 p.m, Marissa types something into her own phone, then looks at Daniel and nods. Digital forensic analysts later confirm that Evelyn's email account was accessed from inside the house during that exact window. An authentication code sent to her inbox was opened within seconds. There are no signs of forced entry, no unknown visitors. Exterior cameras show only Daniel and Marissa. Inside job, a forensic accountant tracks the $9.3 million. $4 million move from the Delaware LLC to a Cayman Islands holding company. $3 million are converted into cryptocurrency across multiple wallets. The remaining funds scatter into layered accounts designed to obscure origin. Daniel insists he was protecting the estate from probate delays. Marissa claims she was following instructions under power of attorney, but text messages recovered from their phones tell a different story. 3 weeks before Evelyn's death, Daniel texts Marissa, "We can't do anything until she's gone." Marissa responds, "I know, just wait." Another message, dated 5 days before the funeral, "Make sure the laptop is ready, we only get one shot." When confronted with the messages, Daniel claims they were discussing routine estate planning. Marissa says the phrases were taken out of context. Prosecutors aren't convinced. Media outlets obtain segments of the surveillance footage through public records requests. National news programs air the silent study footage. Viewers watch Daniel flip through papers. They watch Marissa hand over the key. They watch two people behave as if they're alone. While cameras capture everything, public outrage builds quickly. Federal authorities step in due to the interstate wire transfers and offshore accounts. The FBI executes a search warrant at Daniel's Phoenix home at dawn. 3 months later, body camera footage mirrors the earlier security recordings, the same black SUV, the same composed posture. This time, Daniel is placed in handcuffs in his own driveway. Marissa is arrested later that afternoon in Scottsdale. She appears stunned but calm. During interrogation, she shifts blame. She says Daniel pressured her. She says she feared losing her job. She says Evelyn intended to help Daniel financially, but the evidence is layered and precise. Metadata from Evelyn's laptop shows login activity at 2:41 p.m., the exact moment Daniel was seated at the desk. IP address data confirms access from the home's router. Digital signature analysis suggests the amendment signed in the hospital was executed using stored credentials, not manual confirmation from Evelyn herself. Medical records indicate Evelyn was heavily sedated at the time. As the case moves toward federal court, prosecutors outline charges of conspiracy, wire fraud, financial exploitation of a vulnerable adult, and identity fraud. Defense attorneys argue that estate disputes are civil matters, not criminal. They paint Daniel as a grieving nephew trying to manage complex finances. They portray Marissa as an overworked caregiver caught between family politics. But jurors see the footage. They see the study door close. They see the urgency. They see the timing, hours after a funeral service. They see $9.3 million vanish. During trial testimony, the Foundation's director speaks about Evelyn's vision, scholarships for young women entering cybersecurity, grants for community colleges, programs meant to prevent the very kind of digital manipulation now at the center of her death's aftermath. Irony hangs heavy in the courtroom. Daniel testifies in his own defense. He says he loved his aunt. He says she trusted him. He says the plan was always to restructure assets before probate complications. On cross-examination, prosecutors display the text message, "We can't do anything until she's gone." The courtroom goes silent. Marissa ultimately agrees to cooperate. in exchange for reduced charges. She admits they discussed transferring funds before the funeral. She claims Daniel initiated the LLC formation. She says she provided the key to the study and access to the laptop. The jury deliberates for 4 days. They convict both on multiple counts of wire fraud and conspiracy. Sentencing comes months later. Daniel receives a federal prison sentence of 11 years. Marissa receives 5 years for her cooperation. Not all the money is recovered. Cryptocurrency fluctuations and offshore transfers complicate asset seizure. The Harper Family Foundation receives only a fraction of what Evelyn intended. Today, the Scottsdale estate sits mostly empty. The surveillance system still runs. Another quiet afternoon, another fixed black and white frame. The driveway stretches across the screen. No cars enter, no doors open. The cameras that